And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. Today is Thursday, March 14th, 2013. This is a live broadcast. My name is Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my co-host, my son, investigator extraordinaire, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Our home base, of course, is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com, not affiliated with any government agency. And, of course, our colleagues to the north, CanadaFreePress.com. And together, both Joe and I would like to welcome you to this Thursday broadcast of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Joe, welcome.
Glad to be here. We are in the same studio tonight, thankfully, and you are connected via phone line while your computer's rebooting, so the sound difference.
You're going to hear a little bit of a click and a sound change, but it's all for the good. It's all good. It's all good. We've got a lot of news, folks. A lot of news, information, analysis of the news headlines. It just seems like if you've ever done cooking of spaghetti and you put the spaghetti that's already cooked into a sieve, and all that water that goes through that sieve, well, the spaghetti is what we're after. The water is what we're trying to leave behind. The water being the white noise of news, and of course the spaghetti or the pasta being the actual news headlines that are important to us. From a biblical Christian worldview, I suppose that we would be categorized. And we want to welcome our new listeners in, as we speak, listeners in, and I'm not going to mention the camps, two camps in Afghanistan, one in Iraq. Want to welcome you to our broadcast. Also, the listeners in Israel want to welcome you as well, and the listeners all across the United States, Canada, and the world. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we have, as you said, a lot of news and stories to get into, a lot of continuation of the Pope from yesterday, as this debate and discussion are continuing throughout the mainstream and alternative media, as to try to figure out mostly what I see of the St. Malachi prophecies being figured out in one day with the election of the Pope, if they're true or not.
Well,
and
yeah.
You know,
okay, let me interrupt just 1 second, because I just want to say this is so important. Folks, we are not engaging in Catholic bashing. This has nothing to do with Catholic bashing. The Roman Catholic, the followers of Roman Catholicism. Look, I went to a seminary. I respect the Roman Catholics out there. This has nothing to do with doctrinal issues. It has nothing to do with issues of faith. This is the politics of religion, and that's it only. So we are, folks, we will not tolerate any type of religious bashing or bashing of Catholics. We are discussing intellectually the politics of the religion at the highest levels only. For example, the Vatican Bank. I had to throw that in there, Joby, because I can guarantee you there will be some people that will be,
well, no,
about this.
We can look at it like this. This is a few good analogies I saw today. One is, as far as the prophecy is concerned, trying to discern if it is accurate. Just remember Jesus and remember the people who rejected him and the prophecies of Jesus, when nobody believed he was the Messiah, and not till after his death and resurrection did many people think that it was not the prophecies, ancient prophecies being fulfilled from the old prophets. So we have to look at it like that. Prophecy cannot be discerned or fulfilled. Not all prophecy can be recognized, if it is even prophecy, the St. Malachi prophecies, if they are real. It couldn't be discerned in a day with a name. But definitely we need to look at the body of works from this man's past, his present, and what he's going to do in the future. Now, I learned some interesting things about his name, and about a couple different ways you can look at the Peter the Roman. But either way, we don't need to concern ourselves too much with the prophecies of St. Malachi. We don't need to concern ourselves with, Nostradamus's things, the quatrains, which are not in the Bible. What we need to do is be grounded and rooted in doctrine, in sound doctrine.
Yeah, you're right, and I think the only, for example, the St. Malachi prophecies, and the content in the book Petrus Romanus, the extensive investigative research that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam have done. Why are we talking about this? Why would we care? Really? Well, we only care because these are pieces of a larger puzzle, and it's the larger puzzle that we're after, not anything else. It's the it's kind of, once again, I would compare it to a crime scene. And
one thing that bothers me was, Tom Horn and Chris Putnam, and this is nothing against them personally, but I just imagine this response is due in part to a lot of, I would say, heat that they might be getting, or, questions or things people might be saying, hey, this isn't Peter the Roman, as your book says. So they issue statements trying to say, look, or defending their position before it even really needs an answer. Right.
Well, right. Yeah. And I think personally, I really believe if and those people that I've received emails from about Pope Francis, that is the new Pope, saying, well, what an epic failure that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam had. They were way off base on this. I found that each and every one of these people, at least the ones that answered me, never read the book Petrus Romanus, never listened to our program with Chris Putnam and Tom Horn, or Steve Quayle and Tom Horn, so they don't quite get where it's coming from. They're thinking, well, because the name isn't Peter, the prophecy is a failure.
Yeah, and either way, like I said, it doesn't matter because, one, if you want to find something hard enough, you can find it. And I've seen this today through researching people's interpretations on how they will, they're breaking down his last name. And one part of his last name means mountain, and they're saying the stone of Peter, and breaking down, trying to fit everything into the way they believe it or interpret it. And that's not what we're supposed to do. Scripture is universal. Scriptures are universal. They are not for private interpretation. They and look at Jeremiah. We'll go back and use Jeremiah as an example. And this can have everything or nothing to do with St. Malachi. He screamed, they're going to, our land is going to be destroyed and overtaken by the enemy unless you turn from your ways and repent. And he was called a lunatic. He was thrown in jail.
Right. And
he was right in what he said. It did not come to pass immediately, but his warnings were correct. He was a watchman screaming, to the people, hey, look, you guys, you're so intertwined with your own culture that you've created, your own doings, and have, tarried away from what God's will is. And now, I've been sent to let you know that this is going to be your peril if you don't listen. And he was pretty much laughed at until they were brought down.
Well, one of the things, and you're right, and just for people to understand where we are coming from, where the Hagmann report is coming from on this. For example, we're looking at a world in chaos. Whether you know it or not, I mean, the world is, and one can argue, well, it's always been in chaos. Well, not to the extent that we're seeing now on multiple levels. So when we approach, for example, and I'll use this in the past, when Joe and I would approach an investigation, we would do so, and not really realizing that we are doing so from a biblical standpoint. And it's difficult to really describe in words, but in an investigation, those really wanting the truth will go after the truth. Will seek the truth. After all, isn't that the ultimate goal of any investigation, is to seek the truth, right? Whether it's a murder case or whether it's a theft case, all we want to know is what is the truth. Well, guiding an investigation, either knowingly or unwittingly, by biblical principles, it gives you the outline of how to discern the truth or evaluate the evidence. And that's kind of, and I was thinking about this today, if we could, in every aspect of our lives, evaluate our actions through the ultimate instructional handbook known as the Bible, wouldn't we be better off? And I think that's what we would be. In other words, approach this with the only bias that we would have is the bias for the unvarnished truth. I guess a bias would be lack of bias, and through a Christian worldview, a Christian biblical worldview, and that's how we're doing things right now. So that said, I hope people understand that this is all we're trying to do is find out exactly where we're coming from in terms of, or find out, or people understand we're actually seeking the truth and nothing more, nothing less. But one of the things I just want to say this: two things in our research that we found I think are extremely important for everyone to really keep in the back of their mind. It might not be important today, but maybe a month from now it might be. Two things that we stumbled across or came across in terms of looking at this Pope today. The first thing is how we got to this point in the leadership of the Vatican, by way of the Vatican Bank, which is an entity that is managed by Ernst von Freiberg. And the Vatican Bank is a huge, huge resource. It's no ordinary bank. And there's a lot of things. It's kind of like Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, and such. It's an interesting entity, and there are a lot of oddities associated with the Vatican Bank. That's number one. The second thing is, and this is kind of, it could almost be a footnote, the strange death of Pope John Paul I, Albino Luciani, who died under strange circumstances 33 days into his reign back in 1978. So those are two kind of side issues that set a historical foundation, I believe, for where we are right now in terms of the current Pope and the Vatican. And the Vatican is on our radar only because it fits in as one piece of the larger global picture. Hopefully that made sense. And if you want to add anything to that, Joe, I mean, does that make sense to you? I mean, no,
it did make sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're looking at the bigger picture here, and we're looking at the plans for the New World Order. As we know, there is a one world global government system being formed, if not formed already, being executed, and this encompasses all political, economical, and religious aspects. It is not exclusive to one being a political one world order or just a one religious world order. It encompasses all, and that is their goal, stated goal.
Right.
And some of that we have, news today, just this piece, Monsanto Protection Act. I'm not sure how much this has been being covered with all the other things going on, but there is a vote coming up to Congress this week that would give biotech companies like Monsanto's another win in Washington. The U.S. House of Representatives is expected to weigh in on the agriculture appropriations bill for the 2013 fiscal year this week, and included within the act lies the Farmer Assurance provision, a small subsection that has so far earned opposite opposition from hundreds of thousands of family farmers, environmental interest groups, and other advocates.
Right.
Those hoping to defeat the bill have gone so far as to dub the provision Monsanto Protection Act. The small-time agriculturalists have increasingly spoken out against biotech companies in recent years, as giants like Monsanto have made millions off of genetically engineering crops that traditional plants simply can't match up with. Additionally, Monsanto has taken a slew of farmers to court over questionable patent infringement suits, almost always winning with the help of high-powered attorneys. Now, these suits come from cross-pollination, where you could have a regular farmer on one side of the street and a Monsanto farm on the other side, and some pollen and or seeds get, drifted into the regular farmers' crops, and Monsanto claims rights to the farmers' crops, because now there is Monsanto genetically engineered crops growing within the other small farmers' crops. Just practice. I mean, Monsanto should never have been allowed in the first place to geoengineer crops, especially that now have come out to show such harmful links to cancer, to our body through cancer and other diseases that are used to create, whatever products are used to create these GMO super crops are killing our bodies.
We, during the show prep, when you brought this up, I was like, well, this is kind of a big yawn factor here for me. I'm thinking, yeah, okay, this is kind of old news, and really, where does this fit in? And then I realized, and you pointed this out to me, I realized that this, and this is part of the reference material that we have, but federal courts are actually powerless to regulate the sale and even the cultivation of these GMO crops. They have to, they are subjugated, or the federal courts actually succumb instead of the power of the industry itself, as well as Monsanto specifically. And this is the same threat that we faced last summer when this act first came into play. But there was also, and we have to look at this, we have to follow the money here, because what this is doing, by the way, this was kind of a bombshell thing that was slipped into the 2012 Farm Bill, the 2013 Agriculture Appropriations Bill. This is Monsanto taking over the small farms, and the end result here is going to be starvation.
Yeah, it's not only taking over the farms. From what I understand, it is taking over the government, giving itself power above and beyond the government,
yes,
power
exactly.
to regulate them.
And if you look at the growth of this one world order, where the tentacles, it's like an octopus. You've got one tentacle into the agriculture, the food, and another tentacle into the defense, another tentacle into the judiciary. Well, this affects not only the food, but the judiciary, because it places Monsanto and other GMO-type entities outside of the purview of the federal courts, much like, and this is important for people to understand, when you've got a tax claim, for example, you don't go into federal court. You go into an administrative court. That's not a federal court. That's not a courtroom in a federal courthouse. That's an administrative court. So it's much different. The reason I said that is because it's an autonomous body that operates outside of law. And this is why it's so important. So it takes it from that yawn factor. Why are we talking about this? And it really doesn't really have anything to do with us. Well, of course it does, because this is one way that I believe that they're going to starve the population. And think about, and Joe, what these genetically modified foods, I mean, what are we talking here about these foods? What are they? I mean, are they just...
They are lab-created crops. They have taken we'll put it look like a human here. We'll use the human DNA versus transhumanism, where they are trying to take human beings and make them able to hook up to computers. Or I saw an interesting story was passed on to me earlier today, which I found fascinating and scary at the same time, about killer dolphins. I don't know if you heard about these.
Yeah, folks, listen to this.
And I'm trying to find the story here, but killer dolphins with machine guns.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, let me pull up the story here. I know I sent it to you, but
no, you did. I can't send it back to you, but
here it is.
Okay. All right.
In Ukraine, why Ukrainian killer dolphins probably are not on the rampage. Armed, lethal dolphins have escaped into the wild. Sometimes thinly sourced stories are too good to be true. Now this goes on to say that there's lots of stories that have come out about these dolphins, some with the titles very that were
they're sketchy.
Yeah, heavily armed sex-crazed dolphins on a rampage was one title. To another one, 3 commando dolphins go AWOL in Crimea. But either way, there are 3 dolphins, part of the Ukraine Navy's killer dolphin program, that have escaped their handlers during a training exercise, probably going to look for a mate. Sources from the Ukrainian media said military dolphins were used, as the Ukraine's defense ministry denied the reports, but either way, there are dolphins trained to attack enemy combat swimmers using special knives or pistols fixed to their heads. Now, if you guys think that's crazy, America, the U.S. Navy actually had its own fleet, but of dolphin programs, and we've all seen the video, or at least the pictures of the fish drones a while back. But yeah, we have dolphins that have a microchip in their brain that can be used to shoot, and they're in the water. Now, why do you need dolphins with weapons fixed on them with the ability to shoot things in the water? Sounds a little bit sketchy, but it is just absolutely insane. The level of technology, we're modifying crops. So in the words of the elite, we can feed more people, when really those crops are being not used to feed more people, but they're being used for to take over the whole agriculture system in the U.S. and part of the Codex Alimentarius, Henry Kissinger's Memorandum 200, the ability to starve a nation through and control a nation through food. They want and can. And look at the droughts we've had last year with the crops, the problems with the crops. Well, some of these GMO foods are drought resistant, which means they'll just grow regardless. But there has been numerous studies, some by high-level universities in and out of this country, that link these GMO, genetically modified crops, to cancer, to other brain disorders, and other disorders that have problems with unborn babies.
Well, the thing that gets me is we complain, and we bring to the forefront the craziness of Nanny Bloomberg, of Bloomberg coming out and saying, hey, you know what, you can only have a 32-ounce maximum soda, for example, and him coming across like that. Yet he's one of the biggest advocates, as well as others like him, into the GMO process. Or and the other thing too, I've got to say, well, and no one, by the way, seems to understand, or the general public, I should say, seems to understand less about GMO products than. That's one thing that's unclear to a lot of people, the genetically modified foods. In fact, you go to the grocery store, and I don't know, have you seen these, the irradiated beef and such at the grocery stores? Well, it's there, and there's a lot of people. When you ask, like, well, what's, just casually ask, well, what's the difference between irradiated beef and normal beef? And if you ask the average person, they don't know. When you start getting into, for example, GMO foods, they don't know.
Well, this is part of the larger. The genetically modified foods is part of the larger. It has connections to, of course, the spraying of chemicals in the air, for example. So GMO products and chemtrails are there's a relationship between those. Now, I mean, not a direct relationship, but it's of the same objective and agenda, and of the same kind of group of people. And the same with vaccinations. All of this is related. So it's like, if you were to walk into an evidence room, and this is the only way I can kind of process this mentally, walk into an evidence room, one shelf would have, let's say, a box would be GMO foods, another box would be aerial spraying of chemicals, otherwise known as chemtrails, which people say, oh, that doesn't exist, or that's just overblown, and then another part would be vaccines, and then of course you've got the Codex Alimentarius and Agenda 21 and so on and so forth, and the fluoride and but that room in the evidence room, what's that shelf labeled? Well, that shelf would be labeled global governance and the process of control by the global governance. So that's kind of how I process this in my mind. These are all little components to the larger agenda. So so it's not a yawner, folks.
No. Part of that agenda we've seen in recent months and especially weeks here is the gun control agenda. We had Dianne Feinstein and Ted Cruz trading verbal blows over a gun ban legislation in a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, and I have an audio of that. It's pretty 3 minutes. Ted Cruz and Feinstein, explosive debate over gun control in the Senate. And Feinstein says, I am not a sixth grader.
Do you have it queued up?
Yeah, I do. We're going to go to this audio, then we'll hit the article on the other side.
If I might pose a question to the senior senator from California. In your response to Senator Cornyn, you mentioned that there's some 100 pages of the bill that specify particular firearms that if this bill were passed, Congress would have deemed prohibited. It seems to me that all of us should begin as our foundational document with the Constitution. And the Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights provides that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The term, the right of the people, when the framers included it in the Bill of Rights, they used it as a term of art. That same phrase, the right of the people, is found in the First Amendment, the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition their government for redress of grievances. It's also found in the Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And the question that I would pose to the senior senator from California is, would she deem it consistent with the Bill of Rights for Congress to engage in the same endeavor that we are contemplating doing with the Second Amendment in the context of the First or Fourth Amendment? Namely, would she consider it constitutional for Congress to specify that the First Amendment shall apply only to the following books and shall not apply to the books that Congress has deemed outside the protection of the Bill of Rights? Likewise, would she think that the Fourth Amendment's protection against searches and seizures could properly apply only to the following specified individuals and not to the individuals that Congress has deemed outside the protection of the Bill of Rights?
Senator, yield for a question.
Let me just make a couple of points in response. One, I'm not a sixth grader. Senator, I've been on this committee for 20 years. I was a mayor for 9 years. I walked in, I saw people shot. I've looked at bodies that have been shot with these weapons. I've seen the bullets that implode. In Sandy Hook, youngsters were dismembered. Look, there are other weapons. I've been I'm not a lawyer, but after 20 years, I've been up close and personal to the Constitution. I have great respect for it. This doesn't mean that weapons of war, and the Heller decision clearly points out 3 exceptions, 2 of which are pertinent here. And so it's fine you want to lecture me on the Constitution. I appreciate it. Just know I've been here for a long time. I've passed on a number of bills. I've studied the Constitution myself. I am reasonably well educated, and I thank you for the lecture. Incidentally, this does not prohibit, you use the word prohibit, it exempts 2,271 weapons. Isn't that enough for the people in the United States?
Mr.
Do
Chairman?
they need a bazooka? Do they need other high-powered weapons that military people use to kill in close combat? I don't think so. So I come from a different place than you do. I respect your views. I ask you to respect my views.
Yeah, she'll respect your views if you respect her views, if I heard her correctly. I don't think that's the case.
No, she's jamming her views down the throats of every American. By the way,
the Senate Judiciary Committee has approved the ban on assault weapons and high-capacity ammunition clips now.
This draconian measure, this is such a draconian measure. Folks, once again, when you talk with your family members, when you talk with your friends, your coworkers, if the discussion comes up, I've heard this so many times, well, you don't need an AR-15 to kill a deer. It goes back to the basics. When you talk to the people that have this mindset, it may be important to remind them that the answers lie in the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the writings of Thomas Jefferson about the Second Amendment. The beauty part of the Second Amendment, and I'm paraphrasing here from Thomas Jefferson, is when you need it, it's there. Okay, and he's referring directly to the Second Amendment as it applies to our fighting against governmental tyranny. Not for hunting, not for skeet shooting, not for sports, not for whatever. It's
not for target practice?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. So, apparently, and I grabbed a book, my son, one of my son's college books about fallacies, facts and fallacies, and arguments involved. And it was kind of a strange title, but what I'm witnessing is, and what Joe, we were talking about this, what we're witnessing, is reframing the argument away from the real issue of the Second Amendment, what that's all about, to a bastardized version of what the Second Amendment is supposed to be, according to Dianne Feinstein and others. Isn't it interesting how they cannot argue or they cannot talk if, in fact, and I'll close with this, Joe, and then you can go on, but if the government, if the senators, if our representatives, if the people out there that represent us or purport to represent us, if they understood the Constitution, then we would not be having any of these discussions. They would not exist. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, if they understood this, we would not have any of these discussions, simply because it's a Second Amendment right. And as a matter of fact, the states that are making all of these laws, and folks, we have to, this is one thing too, about the states, we have to watch what they're doing.
Now, remember yesterday that clip of Ed Schultz talking about, conspiracy, anti-government, right-wing conspiracy nuts trying to play off fears that Obama wants to take your guns when that's not the case. He's a proponent of the Second Amendment. He sticks up for your rights and constitutional freedoms. It's not about what Obama wants.
But I came across...
It's not what Obama does, even. Well, it is about what Obama does, but it's about who's behind those decisions.
Well, you know something? It's interesting because, let me just grab this note card here. When you mentioned that, I found... I was doing some research on Obama, and I think perhaps we need to just kind of go back to looking at what he has said, what he has done, what positions he has taken. Go ahead.
I want to jump this in here before you start. Is the public opinion aspect? This is our culture, our society, our public opinion of how the people think,
right?
And this, through state-sponsored TV, well, through TV in general, is with propaganda is being created, is being shifted and shaped and molded into what they want us to believe, not what we are taught and brought up, and our generations of our families, the way they were brought up. We are living in a completely different world than our families and our ancestors were 100 years ago.
Oh, you got that right.
So what was acceptable 100 years ago might have still been controversial to the Constitution and ideas of change and moving forward. Those things were seen as especially allowing homosexuals to be married in churches. Those have been completely stopped at the ground level at every town hall, city, county by the people because they knew it was wrong. Where now the propaganda has shaped the public's opinions on what is acceptable and tolerant, not from a biblical point of view, but from their own created society they had 50 years ago or 100 years ago. They can do and create and shift the paradigm of our realities much faster with the mechanisms of technology today through the flow of information we have with the internet, the speed which that information flows, the control of the content of news stories. And Sandy Hook will use for an example because that's used in about every single report that is written about gun control anymore. Those issues, this couldn't have been done 100 years ago. This couldn't have been done even 50 years ago.
That's correct. And so too, that the one point is so important because of the mind. Well, as you have said, the generations have been diluted, distilled. The thought processes, it's almost like a genetics issue where it just keeps going worse.
For class or race or status, we are all being programmed. The elite are programmed to think the way they do from their parents. Now, 100 years ago, a regular family in America, their parents would have brought children up to be hardworking, God-fearing, good people. Where today, kids are born into families, unfortunately, where the parents do not have any scriptural foundation or any biblical foundation or any knowledge of the Lord or His saving grace, nor do they care to have.
Exactly.
So they're being brought up, they're way behind the eight ball. And think of when you see people from any walk of life coming to the Lord. It's really a miracle in today's society that they would choose to be and walk with the Lord rather than all of the earthly pleasures and things that have been created for humans to be distracted by appear and much more interesting than following the Lord.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point you bring up because environmentally, and some say, well, geez, we're a product of our environment. Well, to an extent, I believe that's true. If you look at crime statistics and you look at any person that's involved in any criminal activities in terms of assessing them and evaluating them, and you look at the environment, and there are exceptions, of course, to this, but yes, today's homes, their families, it's not conducive necessarily to Christian viewpoints or the Christian worldview. It's anything but conducive to that.
Yeah, and even children who do, find their way to the Lord, whether it be through the Lord's intervention on them, and they have parents who are unbelieving, they're met with resistance from their parents at times. Family members today know what I'm talking about. Parents and brothers and sisters who have come to find the Lord when talking to their families about their experiences are met with resistance and being marginalized and having, that element of division instantly brought between them just because of that belief.
One thing I'd like to do kind of as a homework assignment, this is a little off to the left or right or something. I mean, it's kind of a side road here. but to the listeners of this broadcast, if you are a parent today, we tend to think, and I fell into this myself, and you're going to know what I mean when you hear me say this. We tend to think, when we were in school, we had our school books, and we learned, we did our homework assignments and what have you, we turned it in. Well, we have a tendency to kind of equate our experiences with our school books with our children's. There's this assumption that nothing has changed. The homework assignment I would ask everyone to do, if you're a parent of a child, either elementary or high school, take a look at their school books that they're bringing home, assuming that they do for homework, unless you're homeschooling, of course. But take a look at the school books and take a look at what's inside. For example, the history book, or what they call social studies, or whatever they might call it today. Take a look at the content, and just for example, read about American history, or just take a section and read the section to see if it comports with what you believe or have been taught. It might take you an hour or two to do this, but I would urge everybody that has a child in school today to do that, to grab a hold of their school book, and just, hey, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't even have to tell your child you're doing this, or whatever. And also look at the publisher who published it, and the name and when. But I would think you might be surprised, for example, to read an account of the American Revolution, or the Industrial Revolution even, or particularly the Industrial Revolution, or how they portray some of the presidents and what have you. Take a look. Take a good hard look. Now, you don't have to grab their algebra book, okay, but specifically the social studies book. If you're a grandparent, maybe you can do that through your son or daughter and your grandkids. Just take a look at it and see if there's anything you find objectionable. And in so doing as well, maybe ask your school district for a curriculum. They've got curriculums out there for different grades, different, whether it be junior high, senior high, high school, whatever. And just be proactive. Ask them for a book list, a textbook list, what they're using. And I think you might be surprised, but do it. Get involved. That's my suggestion. Now, before we go any further, two things. We were talking about Obama, his Second Amendment thing. I don't want to stray too far from this. Just want to kind of give you a Cliff Notes version of Obama and the Second Amendment very briefly. When Obama was in law school, he was mentored by Lawrence Tribe. Now, you might remember Lawrence Tribe. He was a big opposer to gun rights. In 1994, Obama joined the board of the Joyce Foundation. Very anti-gun. Also, he was a member of the Independent Voters of Illinois, the Independent Precinct Organization. Valerie Jarrett, supporter of the gun ban. Valerie Jarrett was a supporter of the gun ban as well. His closest advisor. He was. Valerie Jarrett, by the way, was deputy chief to Mayor Richard Daley of Chicago. Obama fought for a 500% increase on the taxes for ammunition back in 1999. Can you see where this is going? When he was a state senator, 500% increase on the taxes for ammunition. In 2003, he voted to ban the private ownership of hunting rifles, shotguns, target rifles, and black powder rifles in Illinois. That was in 2003. He voted twice against the Castle Doctrine, and that Castle Doctrine was presented as Illinois Senate Bill 2105. In fact, if you look this up, there was a case called Hale DeMar, who was arrested, involving Hale DeMar. He was arrested. He shot and wounded a felon by the name of Mario Billings, who was attacking him. It's a bizarre case. So anyone who says, for example, you hear Chris Matthews saying, "Oh, Obama, he's always, he never messed with gun owners." I just gave you 5 or 6 examples during his career where Obama was staunchly anti-gun ownership, anti-Second Amendment, anti-self-defense, and pro-gun ban. So remember those, folks, from law school through today. Gun ban, ammunition taxes, anti-self-defense and castle doctrine, and, of course, members of boards that have the same objectives. And before we move on, Joe, if you can just permit me one thing. I received an email during our opening talk about the Pope. Julie, thank you very much from Tucson. That's all I'm going to give. Julie from Tucson, I want to thank you very much for this email. Excuse me. She writes just briefly, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that she's been listening to us for a while. And she's a practicing Catholic Christian, and she appreciates the way that we're careful not to bash Catholics, but we don't, okay? Other Christians seem to bash Catholics, their beliefs and such, and that's just not a good thing to get into. Now, she does write about Tom Horn, where during the February broadcast, I believe it was, he did state that he is convinced and is professing that this particular Pope that was voted in now is the false prophet. Okay. Well, and she writes that she's very familiar with St. Malachi's prophecy before Tom. And she writes also that she believes that he's making a grave assumption that this Pope is the false prophet of Revelation. The prophecy doesn't say that, she writes. The prophecy states that Peter the Roman will nourish his flock, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, the judge, or the just judge, will come to judge. The point is that we don't know if he's a good point or a bad Pope, which goes back to what you said.
The works, his works will be made manifest and over time, and we will judge him by his works and his fruits, not by any preconceived notions of prophecies or we are in a point where we need to know the times, the seasons we are in. And I was just reading, I think this is out of Jude. No, it was not out of Jude, but no, we are in a time where the seasons must be discerned. Timothy, I think it was here. But we not need be concerned with the date exactly. We should always be ready for the Lord to come.
Right.
So we will not be, and I'm not reading from any exact scripture here, but we should not be caught by surprise on the day of his return.
Right, because we know the season. We just don't know the day.
And we should not be caught by surprise, because we should be constantly living his word. We should be a living example of his word. We should be in his word, and our relationship with him should be so that we know and keep our heads up, for our redemption is near.
Joe, I just real quick, I heard it explained kind of, and I when I heard this explained this way, I can't remember who said this, but I thought it was pretty cool, because in my mind, in my very simple mind, I like to kind of simplify things. I heard it explained this way. Everyone's looking for whatever event, and you can apply this to any event, but in particular the second coming, for example. If somebody said to you, you know what, Joe, or you know what, listener, or whoever, your house is going to be burglarized on Friday, sometime on Friday.
Right. It says this in the Bible. If you know the time where the thief was going to break in, you would be sitting waiting for him. That's directly from the Bible.
Okay, so you've got a general idea, or even sometime over the weekend, you got a general idea. You don't need to know. I mean, once you have that general idea, you are going to be ready for the weekend. So that's all we really need to know about that, I guess. So the date setters out there, man, I just can't get involved in that, or I just can't really wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it says.
But Julie, thank you for your email, by the way.
Yeah, whether in patience or in truth, Christ is preached, and I therein do rejoice and will rejoice. For I know that this shall turn to my salvation through prayer and through the supply of the Spirit of the Lord Jesus Christ, according to my earnest expectation and my hope that in nothing I shall be ashamed, but that with all boldness, as always, so now also Christ shall be magnified in my body, whether it be by life or by death. For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. But if I live in the flesh, this is not the fruit of my labor. Yet what shall I choose? I woot not. No man can serve two masters. Either we are going to live in the flesh, or we are going to live in His Word, in our spirit. And yesterday we talked about the war between our flesh and our spirit.
Right.
But regardless of that war, we are always to be patient. We are always to exhort uplift our brethren, supporting the weak, and being patient towards all men. Seek none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good. And I'm hearing something here. Don't know what it is.
I think it's Christians United dropped off briefly. Now the other thing too I want to mention is some people might not have heard what I said yesterday concerning the money issue. I got a couple of emails today asking me to repeat what my source had told me about the monetary issues. And I want to see if, basically, I want to just kind of go over this again with the economic collapse. And this is important, I believe, to get back into, just to reconfirm the information I got yesterday. When you start hearing about, and this was confirmed also via, this is also confirmed via Steve Quayle's source. When you start hearing about Japan, about the precipitous decline of the yen, know that things here domestically are close to happening with respect to our dollar. The other issue is, folks, you understand that people, or the objective of the global governance, the One World Order people, the power elite, you understand that they want a single currency. That's the objective. They want a currency, a single currency. They want a digital currency. Because they can manipulate, they can track, they can follow us, they can tax us, they can, through a centralized authority. Much like the IRS is centralized, they want all transactions to be monitored and centralized. So in other words, imagine it this way. Imagine you don't have paper money anymore. You don't have coin anymore. You don't have anything. The only thing you have is an ATM-style card. The only thing you have is digital currency. You don't have the change in your pocket or the bills in your wallet. This is what the global One World Order people want, the banker, the central banks want. Now, what's a great way to do it? Well, how do you get people, especially the people who are awake and know what's going on, how do you get them to soften up a little bit with respect to converting and accepting this digital currency as opposed to having it in your pocket or in your safe? One of the ways, and just keep your ear out for this, when you start hearing about possible contamination of paper money, whether it be biological contamination or whatever, chemical, biochemical, biological, biochemical, whatever it is. When you start to hear that, when you begin to hear that there's a concern or an issue, and not just American currency, it could be all paper currency, any paper currency, no matter where it is, Europe, the UK, China, South America, North America, when you start hearing the concern or the possibility of contaminated currency, you know the objective is to get this money off of the streets and the change to a digital currency. I just want everyone to really understand there's two issues here. Keep your eye on the Japanese yen, and the second part of that is the contamination of our currency. When you hear that, know that the engine has started, the car is in gear toward this digital currency and the eradication of paper currency or currency you would hold in your wallet. And once again, the reason is not for efficiency. The reason is for control and surveillance over you, your transactions, what you buy, what you sell, whatever it might be, what you pay, how much money you have in the bank or in whatever venue you have it in. This is what it's all about. So, folks who wanted me to repeat that because of our audio situation yesterday, I just wanted to repeat that, and hopefully that answers your question on that. So, that's done.
All right. All of a sudden, when you were stopping your talk there, I heard a lot of scrambling. Say something.
Well,
yeah, there it is.
Scrambling?
Yeah. I don't understand. Nothing's changed, and nothing.
Are we getting people talking about this? What's scrambling? Can we get folks in this interactive chat? Can you hear us? Or am I scrambling? Am I digitized?
Just hang up on Skype and call back in.
I can do that.
And I'll continue as we're coming up against the break here. Anyway, I found the verse in which I was looking for out of Thessalonians. But of the times and of the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, you are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you as a thief. You are the children of light, and the children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of the darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation.
That's very good. By the way, how's this?
It's much better.
Yeah, I can hear you much better, too. I don't know what that was. It's interesting. I like that. Where is that from, Joe?
That's from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5.
All right. Very good.
I have many other verses I picked out today that go along with that. Out of Jude, we read about the times of the end. It goes on to say, remember even the angels that did not keep their first estate, but left their own habitation, that have reserved an everlasting chains in darkness unto the judgment of the great day. Even as Sodom and Gomorrah, the cities in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication, going after strange flesh, are set forth as an example of suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Well, what are we seeing today in our nation? We are seeing the most profane, through the most profane way of culture and living, through abortions, through the establishing of going after strange flesh, the allowing of homosexuality, the sodomy, the bestiality that has been
it's being taught at Yale now?
Taught, yeah. It's being reinforced. It's ridiculous. I read a article off a Drudge today where Brown University was going to start teaching men how to gain pleasure through their own prostate. I think, if I read that correctly. I mean, just stuff that is absolutely sickening. And folks, we're up against the break. When we come back, we're going to hit on some more news stories.
We've got some really important things to hit too. Should we? Let's just really quickly tell them what we're going to get into.
Just one story. I'll read the headline here, and then we'll go to break. Obama's defense to a Democratic senator complaining about how little his administration has told Congress about the legal justification of his drone policy said.
This is extremely important because it has a lot of backstory to it. With that, folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 14th day of March.
You didn't let me finish. You didn't let me finish to say what he said.
Well, what did he say? Well, I thought you were going to do that.
I'm no Dick Cheney. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This Thursday, March 14th. We'll be right back after these short messages. Stay with us.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Thursday, March 14th, 2013. That was our new intro music provided to us by Mel. Thank you, Mel, so much for that wonderful clip, and I hope we can put together a few more of those because that is not only catchy, but it is upbeat, and I like it a lot. You like it too, old man over there. Sneaking back in.
Old man jamming to the tunes there. I got to tell you, sometimes, and folks, last night was just a really stressful night with things that have gone on. This week's been stressful.
You had a migraine too, which never helps anyone.
And those of you who get migraines, you know what I'm talking about. The type that lay you out flat, where you cannot. Well, no, I shouldn't say. People are different, but mine, no lights, no sound. And I'll tell you, smell. Like, for example, somebody cooks something. Oh, does that or and folks that suffer from migraines, you know what I'm talking about. You know about the smells. You know about the sounds. You can't even move, and you just can't. And they'll last for. I mean, they can give you morphine extraordinaire, and it wouldn't help. So, I guess what I'm saying to you is, boy, sorry about that, but it was just with the audio problems, which is why the audio for last night is not up tonight, because we did check it out today and we found, a lot of distortion. So we'll see if we can salvage some of that and put it up. But anyway, I interrupted you.
Out of the Book of Jude, I found the rest of what I was going to read about concerning the last days, and I'll start from verse 14. And Enoch also, the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, for all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These are murmurers, complainers, walking after their own lusts, and their mouth speaketh great swelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of advantage. But, beloved, remember ye the words which were spoken before of the apostles of the Lord Jesus Christ, how they that told you there would be mockers in the last time, who should walk after their own ungodly lusts. These be they who separate themselves sensual, not having the Spirit. But you, beloved, building up yourselves on most holy faith, praying in the Holy Ghost, keep yourselves in the love of God, looking for this mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. And of some have compassion, making a difference. And others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garment spotted by the flesh. Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling, and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. To the only wise God our Savior be the glory, the majesty, dominion, and power, both now and forever. And there is a lot in there to digest, but one of the things that always catches my ear is walking after their own lust, and their mouths speaking great swelling words, having men's persons in admiration because of advantage. And there is a whole host of other verses that talk about the mouth and the sins committed by the mouth and the words that can never be taken back. And this was something that was talked about in the chat room last night, that words cannot be redacted. All that is said from your mouth will be a part of what you see at the end of your journey when you do meet Jesus on Judgment Day.
That's right.
And we need to remember this, because all the name calling, all the doubting of even sound doctrine, all the different theories and the denominational strifes we see.
Yes.
Uplifting. We need to continue to not only be uplifting to each other, but send a message of teaching people how to be uplifting, even in the face of adversity, and in the face of being mocked, and in the face of being name-called. We don't need to get defensive. The Lord knows our hearts and our minds. He knows what our intentions are, whether they lead us to good decisions or bad ones. We need to make sure we are all right with him. We don't need to make sure we are all right with John, the next door neighbor, or Bob, the local newspaper columnist. We have one person to be accountable to, not,
right,
1,000 people, 1,000 men on earth. Yes, we do need to, and people that are in our positions who have an audience or have people that listen to them, whether it's 1 or 1 million, it makes no difference. The word should not change. We should not change. We need to always be following what the Spirit leads us to do, not what our flesh leads us to do.
Exactly.
And that's difficult for a lot of people, including myself. And that is something that we all need to be aware of as much as possible. And being aware of spiritual things is something we didn't talk about covering tonight on the show, but I think it's something that I just kind of fell into, so we're going to go into it. How often do you think of the Lord? How often do you think, when making decisions on earth, about consulting the Lord, or how that will affect you and your relationship and walk with the Lord on earth?
And I know, I know people are saying, look, I didn't tune in to be preached to.
Well,
but you know what? Those very people are the ones that probably need it the most. And I think this is important, especially given where we are at today in the United States, in particular, globally in general. So that's why it's important.
Yeah. Would you rather hear the praise from 10,000 people when you're doing something wrong, or the words of one godly friend who will correct your ways and call you out and say, hey, this is not right. You're not doing this properly. You're not approaching this properly. This needs to change. And too often we see people will give praise to somebody they look up to or hold in high esteem. And nobody should hold another person in any high esteem other than they hold themselves and everybody else on this earth.
We're all men and women, and we're all made of the flesh.
And everything needs to be tested through the Spirit of the Lord, through prayer. And that's one thing we can never reiterate too much, along with being and accepting the Holy Spirit and the Lord as your Lord and Savior, and repenting. We can never reiterate too much.
And for the people who have jobs tomorrow, or maybe you're listening to this on your job or in that particular area of Afghanistan, apply this to what you're doing. Just apply it. And it's
no matter what job, no matter what your duty or your labor is here on this earth, you have to apply it. Otherwise, we're not doing our jobs properly.
Exactly. And I look at the news headlines, and I just want to kind of go over this and think that just mention this in the context, against the backdrop of what you just went through, because I think this is so important. Because with the news that remember the initial me talking about the spaghetti or the pasta in the strainer and the water. Of course, we're after the pasta, which is the real news. Well, when you look at that real news, you also have to look at it through the prism of the biblical worldview and how we should react and consider the larger picture of where things are going. When we see things right now when most of us live in essentially constitution-free zones in America, or whatever country you might be listening to this in, for example, today's headlines, no more Fourth Amendment. DHS can seize belongings without reason. From Wired Magazine, Constitution-free zone upheld. Do you live in a place where you're no longer free? That might be an older article, but still it applies today. The FEMA camp bill is back. Once again, older article, but relevant to what we're talking about today. When I say older, I'm talking within the last month or so. Government says it can assassinate or definitely detain Americans on American soil without any due process of law. That has been massaged a tad since it was first talked about in December. Are these conspiracy theories? Well, no, they're not conspiracy theories. You know, when we talk to different people, have any of you ever thought, especially the older folks like me, have you thought that we'd live long enough to see our country disintegrate right before our very eyes? It's happening every day in every way, especially morally. And you know, Joe, you've talked about that foundation in which we should look at everything and apply everything. But going on to this or going forward, Americans especially, and those people in the West, we're living in a cage. It may be a gilded cage, but it's still a cage. One thing that remains, one stumbling block yet remains for our complete imprisonment, of course, is the gun grab. We must voluntarily disarm, we are told. The big question in the minds of many Americans today is this, and it might even be in your mind. Will Americans willingly give up the only last remaining avenue open to them to preserve their freedom, or what's left of it? You know, Americans who are aware of this intolerable encroachment by our government on our hard-won freedom, the freedom that was won by the blood, sweat, and tears of our forefathers, and liberty, we're asking ourselves, some of us anyway, in one form or another, if you know, if this can be really happening in our country, and of course it is. Consider, however, as you heard earlier, the Feinstein Amendment, which squeaked through the Senate Judiciary Committee, the Feinstein bill, as these lawmakers push for a government ban of all types of firearms, recent polling shows that 66% of Americans, 2/3 of Americans who have guns in their household, would defy any law requiring them to give up their guns. The majority of the respondents in a particular poll, 52%, revealed that someone in their home owns guns. They also were asked, if the government passed a law to take your guns, would you give up your guns or defy the law to keep up your guns? Well, 65% of them said they would defy the law. And folks, I really want you to think about this, because this is not an exercise in logic. This is what we have to look for in a practical sense. You can break it down: 70% Republicans, and even 52% Democrats who answer the question. Let's see here. Only 22% said that they would give up their guns. Okay, so you've got basically 1 out of 5 people saying, "Yeah, I'd give up my guns," and another 13%, or 1 out of 10, or 1 out of 100, not sure, roughly. So think about this. We're becoming a police state, essentially. We're living in a police state. We've got squadrons of aerial drones above us, peeping Toms above us. You've got license plate readers. By the way, Joe, I'm going to tell you this. According to a source, the installation of license plate readers on every egress and ingress to and from Manhattan have been complete. Therefore, any car, any vehicle going into the borough of Manhattan, your license plate is red.
We talked about this before the installation of these cameras, and not only that, but the facial recognition software that is going along with in Manhattan, in New York City, to the point where you can wear a full facial mask and still have your face picked out. Exactly, or a ski mask or whatever. They still can. It's like fingerprints. There's still enough there for comparative points where they can reconstruct your facial identity, even if you were wearing a ski mask. So think about that. So with all of this, that backdrop, how we're living right now, in the backdrop which you cited from Scripture, the two must go hand in hand so we can make conscious, logical, and decisions that are reasonable. I mean, not only reasonable, but decisions that are just decisions, that comport with our belief
and with the Bible and with the teachings and so on. So I think it's the two go hand in hand. That's why I extended that and kind of matched it up with what you said, because we're living in that. People say, well, when are the walls going to be closing in, or when are they going to close in? Well, they're already closing in. So it's important to get our spiritual mind right as well as our mental acuity, make sure that's sharpened, and there you have it. So
back to what I closed with at the top of the last hour. President Obama, I'm no Dick Cheney on drones. This is what an article from Politico writes. Part of what two senators in a room recounted of Obama's response when near the outset of his closed-door session with the Senate Democrat Conference on Tuesday. Senator Jay Rockefeller confronted the president over the administration's refusal for 2 years to show Congressional Intelligence Committee, Justice Department office, the legal counsel memos justifying the use of lethal force against American terror suspects abroad. Obama recently allowed members of those panels to see the memo, but only after senators in both parties threatened to hold up the confirmation of John Brennan as the CIA director. But Brennan was confirmed last week, and lawmakers are not the only ones in the intelligence panels that are still being denied access to the memos, and several are steamed over being frozen out. In response to Rockefeller's critique, Obama said he is not involved in drafting such memos. The senator told Politico he has tried to assure his former colleagues that his administration is more open to an oversight than George Bush's, who many Democratic senators attacked for secrecy and expanding executive power in the national security realm. This is not Dick Cheney we're talking about here, he said, according to Democratic senators who asked not to be named in discussing this private meeting. Two Obama administration officials who asked not to be named confirmed Rockefeller raised the drone oversight issue with the president at the session. The White House had no comment on Obama's alleged reference to the former vice president.
Nice. Well, bottom line on this.
Bottom line on this. The president is just trying to distance himself from, or saying, I'm no Dick Cheney, this is not the Bush administration, when really it's not. It is the Bush administration on steroids when it comes to transparency. It is the Bush administration on steroids when it comes to increasing executive power without congressional oversight. It is a far worse president when it comes to drone strikes and the number of civilians and or militants killed overseas. He is the Bush administration on steroids with wars undeclared. Look at his body of work. He has overthrown nations around Israel that were relative peace and security was once there. There was not worry to where we saw the overthrow of these leaders and, hundreds or if not thousands of rockets being launched into Israel last year from the borders. Now we see, 35 African nations have been invaded by the U.S. and NATO, part of an AFRICOM mission, as well as Islamist governments being enthroned in countries closest to Israel, where hostilities are now arising, and we have more leaders in the Middle East aside from Ahmadinejad speaking about wiping Israel off the map and making sure that they are done with. We have the Taliban wanting to create their own political party. We have the Palestinians being accepted by the UN as a legitimate political establishment.
Right.
The changes under the Obama administration in 4 short years are much more draconian, or I shouldn't say much more draconian. They are just as bad. They have increased much more under Obama than Bush. Bush got the ball rolling with the Patriot Act, and Cheney with the torture, and Obama has done nothing more than cut out the torture and exchange it for murder.
Well, you know something, Joe, and if I can kind of extend this a little bit, if I can extend my time here a bit, because Obama has, at this point, and this did not start, as you just mentioned, this did not start with Obama, but it started with long before Obama. It was actually accelerated under George W. Bush, of course, in the shadows of the WTC attacks, but it certainly was. They set the stage for Obama, and it's a willing facilitation of this hostile takeover of the United States. And if I could just get into a couple of things, let me lay this case out to you. You be the jury, ladies and gentlemen. You be the jury. Let me present the case, and then it'll just give me about 3 minutes here. I'm going to present the case, and then you be the jury, because Joe and I have done a lot of research, obviously, putting together a lot of things, trying to connect the dots, but here it is. Within the last 12 months, Obama is taking a lot of actions that, when you connect the dots on these actions, clearly indicates his plan for a hostile takeover of the United States from within. Now, this sounds absolutely conspiratorial and out there, but I am absolutely convinced, we are absolutely convinced this is what's going to be, the groundwork is here. And you might think, well, wait a minute, I've heard all this. Now, just hold on. Let's connect all of the dots that we know of. Obama has been tailoring a United States military to his personal agenda. We haven't really talked much about this, but he's filling the ranks with homosexuals who will follow him to any extreme because he is their personal champion. And think about what Clinton is doing, Bill Clinton, his position now on the Defense of Marriage Act. So number one, the filling the ranks with homosexuals. He's all but shackled Christian chaplains in the military from preaching Christianity to the troops. In fact, some of them, and you can find this online verification of this if you don't believe us, some of the chaplains aren't even allowed to have Bibles in some areas of the Middle East or any semblance of Christianity. That, of course, one can argue that has been in Saudi Arabia, that's been a policy, but now we're looking at Afghanistan and Iraq, which has changed in the last 12 months. The real coup de grace, however, he's been tailoring his top military leaders, asking if they are willing to shoot Americans. Joe and I, we've talked about this before. The answer, by those saying yes, they are put in key positions, while those who say no are basically self-terminating themselves, and their careers are at an end. The DHS. Now, I've seen arguments saying that this is absolutely not true. These are just future purchase orders. But DHS stockpiling millions of weapons and billions of rounds of ammunition. The federal government, even with NOAA, stockpiling weapons and ammunition. The unprecedented measures within the DHS and within the military. It's unprecedented in American history. It's got no purpose or basis other than to use against the American people. This massive push, by the way, for gun control has one purpose and one purpose only, and that's to disarm the American people. End of story. There are more guns in private ownership than there are people in the United States, and that would make a pretty hostile takeover pretty difficult, by the way, costly, time-consuming, and quite ugly. But the stockpiles of weapons and ammo are just for that purpose, we believe, because Obama knows that there are a lot of Americans who will not give up their guns so easily. Attorney General Eric Holder, he's already warned gun owners to cower in the corner, if you will. One of the problems, by the way, with guns in the hands of people that the government doesn't want or doesn't know where. One of the problems with gun owners and the guns in the hands of the American people is the government doesn't know where they are. So what are they doing? They're backing this complete gun registration and background checks. They need to do this. And people will say, oh, it's foolish to think background checks will lead to gun confiscation. But historically, it always does. You cannot.
Janet Reno quoted that.
Exactly.
I mean, and among many others.
And you know, the even more, and people don't really get this, I don't think they get this to the extent which they should, Obamacare, under this Affordable Health Care Act, doctors and medical staffers are gathering information on their patients as to whether or not they own a weapon. So the next time you go to your physician, and if you haven't experienced this yet, you will, but the questions are being asked, do you own a weapon? I would urge you to think long and hard before you answer that question. And under the National Defense Authorization Act, of course, they've got the illegal right to indefinitely detain anyone. Understand that. They don't have to produce any evidence. They don't have to obtain a warrant. They don't have to give you a right to counsel. They don't have to give you due process. Obama, Holder, all they have to do is say that you are a threat. And that could very well be the last anyone sees of you for a long time. Was this just by Obama? Of course not. This was under Bush as well. This is a baby brainchild or a kind of a baby project, pet little thing of Lindsey Graham and of John McCain. This is not a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan issue. Well, why? Because it's a globalist issue. Obama issued an executive order that gives him the absolute power and control over all means of communication for any reason, not just because of an emergency, but including an emergency. See, this executive order, and you can look this up, we talked about it, it includes all television, radio, cable, internet, cell phone, you name it, that's it. And Obama is placing drones in the skies over America. If you don't think that this was with the works under George W. Bush, you're mistaken. It was. There are going to be, or have been, or are over 30,000 drones in American skies. You see, if Obama feared a threat, for example, from another nation, do you think that there would be slashing of our military spending, cutting of our nuclear arsenal down to 1/3 of what it was? No. Well, perhaps, but at least not so overtly. So everything that Obama is doing and putting together is pointing inside the U.S., the threat inside, not from outside. And combine that with the Southern Poverty Law Center, despite what you think of them, me, not so highly, but nonetheless, they came across with what? A listing of these patriotic terror groups that MSNBC, the official spokespeople for Obama, this regime, was so gladly to adhere to and talk about. Chris Matthews. Well, don't forget the targets. Those are targets for this internal action by this particular president. Now, think back. Just think back for a second about Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers and Obama have an interesting relationship. Ayers was a wanted domestic terrorist back in the 60s and 70s. Larry Grathwell, we've had on our program, of course, talked about this. Ayers was a co-founder of the Weather Underground. Now, in an interesting kind of play on words, NOAA is the new Weather Underground, perhaps, with the storage and stockpiling of weapons as well, the National Federal Weather Agency. But there's a few more things that perhaps we haven't discussed, or perhaps you haven't been up to speed on. Did you know that during the height of the war in Iraq, the U.S. Army fired less than 6 million rounds in any given month of ammunition? Think about that for a second. During the height of the war in Iraq, the U.S. Army fired less than 6 million rounds during any given time in the month. So that means 22 years worth of ammunition at the very least. Some say 25, some say 29, some say 19. It doesn't matter. Everything is turning inward. What is the justification for the purchase of this ammunition? And don't tell me that this is just for pricing purposes. Why is Senator Dianne Feinstein so concerned about private citizens stockpiling ammunition, weapons, and high-capacity mags when the federal government is doing so? Except, 1,000 times that? You know, the MRAP vehicles, and oh yes, oh of course. No, that's really not true. You will read on some forums. The 2,715 MRAP vehicles, that's a conspiracy theory. They're not really being rolled out. Oh, do the research. Yes, they are. They are meant to be deployed on the streets of America. The number of vehicles which they are purchasing, just released 2,717 vehicles, have been retrofitted by the manufacturer. The retrofitting includes certain things that will make them compatible for driving on U.S. streets. It's pretty frightening when you take a look at all of the dots. We believe Barack Hussein Obama is preparing for the bloodiest war in American history that will take place on American soil. That's what we believe. What will be the catalyst? Well, we go back to the monetary issues. We go back to the collapse of the American dollar. We go back to the racial strife. And if you look back, folks, I would urge everyone to look back at the information provided to me, well, to Joe and I, from our DHS source last year, and compare it to what we're seeing right now. Does it balance? Is it the same? Is it correct? I mean, does it look like things are playing out the way it was being anticipated? Yeah. There are some things that haven't happened yet, but yeah.
Yeah, and today saw this article. Bill Gates, one of the wealthiest men in America, says some days he wishes Obama could have more power and we could be like England. So Obama could have slightly more power. Gates was asked for his assessment of Obama's job performance during an interview at Politico's Playbook cocktail events. He says, some days I wish we had a system like the UK where, you know, the party in power could do a lot. You know, you'd see how it went, and then fine, you could unelect them, Gates said. Now, over time, our system has worked slightly better than theirs.
Right.
Theirs has worked okay, but It's so ironic that now it feels like I wish there was slightly more power in the presidency to avoid some of these deadlocks. I think what Obama wants to do, and what he's actually able to do, the gap is so big there that it's hard to know in some ways if it will work. So Bill Gates hoping we had a monarchy here, so Obama could have more power.
I think that's important, folks. Think about the statement invoking Great Britain.
Yeah, and
think about that, because where is all the monetary power going to be administered from? It's going to be administered from that once again, the city within the city in London.
Well,
There's a reference to Great Britain there.
Obama does have enough power. Look at his new Obamacare plans. The Obama administration plans to cut Medicare Advantage reimbursements. Mm-hmm. The Obama administration is planning new cuts to Medicare. A federal regulatory filing reveals cuts that could mean higher premiums or seniors losing their health care coverage altogether. Now, going back to what Ed Schultz said, what's wrong with giving 30 million people health care? Well, it depends on who you're giving it to. As we see the sequester do-over headline from the Washington Times, feds recapture 4 immigrants released under budget cuts. And this headline's so messed up because, first of all, they didn't release the immigrants because of budget cuts. But anyway, the Obama administration Thursday said it had rearrested and brought back 4 of the most dangerous immigrants it released from detention last month in the run-up to the budget sequester cuts. U.S. Customs and Border Enforcement Director John Morton testified to Congress that his agency released 10 Level 1 offenders and has gone out to bring 4 of them back in. The other 6 are nonviolent.
This is political theater. This is nothing but theater for the masses.
Now, remember when this was happening, they were reporting that thousands of immigrants were released, and the White House was saying, no, it was only hundreds. And ICE was saying, no, it was only a few hundred. Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Morton acknowledged that 2,800 plus immigrants were released, far more than the several hundred the agency initially admitted to. So, of those 629, they had criminal records, Morton said. Those were low-level offenders. The releases have drawn a stern rebuke from Congress, where Republicans said it showed the mismanaged priorities by the Obama administration. And like you said, political theater. He said the choice was between maintaining 34,000 immigrants in detention or furloughing ICE agents, which he said would curb the agency's other areas, such as investigations of drug or child pornography cases and money laundering. I don't think it would be good policy to ask us to maintain 34,000 immigrants at the expense of those kind of investigations, said Mr. Morton. Either way you look at it, this is all a bunch of political theater. As you said, the money is not the issue. It is the management of the money that is the issue. And we are supposed to, if we are living under God's laws, be managers of not only our lives, of our spiritual lives, we are supposed to be good managers of our monetary situation.
Exactly.
Even if we don't have a good monetary situation. Or we have a great monetary situation.
It doesn't matter. In fact, the worse off that you are, I would contend, listeners, and I'm there, and we're all there. Well, we're all at different levels, but no matter how poor, monetarily speaking, relative to, no matter how much money you have, but how less money you have, I guess might be the case in most of our cases. You've got to work with what you've got. God has called upon us to be good stewards of our money. And, being a listener, supporter broadcast, every dime, every cent, every dollar, every $10 that we get in, the prayer, the thought, the angst that goes with, how best to apply that particular money to advance, not for personal gain, but to advance what we're supposed to be doing for God. I don't know how else to put that.
Our earthly assignment to fulfill
His
spiritual purposes.
That's good.
To give you an idea of where I know I am monetarily, I could not go out and buy an ounce of gold tomorrow unless I sold a lot of things I owned. But
no, wait a second. That you can't be selling that. That's illegal.
Seriously, most of us are in that position.
Yeah, I know. We are, and that's why. See, folks, and I get emails that break my heart because, they're saying, "Well, look, we don't have a lot of money, so how can we prepare?" Well, and that's why even if you,
that's why the spiritual,
yes,
is the only thing that matters. God knows our needs. He knows what we need before we ask. He will take care of
exactly.
If we are
good stewards and believe, right?
We are living righteously. Correct.
Right. Okay.
It's like just because people dispute whether God exists or not, and if His laws, apply or not, or if you don't believe in the law of gravity, are you going to go jump off of a bridge to see if it, is real? If the law of gravity applies to you? Well, you could do that, but you might not like the outcome.
Exactly.
Just like you could choose to ignore the laws of God. You might not like the outcome.
That's a very good analogy, by the way. I like it anyway. You don't have to like it.
And it's just something that, people that listen to our show, most do believe in God. But for those who don't, I want to extend a prayer to you that you do find Him, and you do find your way to Him, whether through His Word, whether another person leads you there, that something happens in your life to let you know that the Lord is real and He is there. And I'm not asking for any kind of miracle, just a subtle nudge in the right direction.
Exactly. All right. To switch gears a little bit here, I would like to tell everyone what Joe and I are focusing on at this point as well, one of our investigative targets. folks, have you noticed something about this particular regime, or the Obama administration? Remember the campaign infrastructure that was in place, that was put in place before the 2008 elections, but continues to remain in place? It's a 501c4, I believe, corporation. Obama, it's actually an outgrowth of the campaign coffers, of the money collected for the campaign. A lot of people are confused. Why? Why did Obama leave his campaign infrastructure in place after his reelection? Well, we had talked about this before, but only alluded to this. Stephanie Cutter, Obama's former deputy campaign manager, was on Ed Schultz's MSNBC program and was talking about this.
Ed Schultz, who will no longer have a nightly news show.
Yeah, actually, there are things called Arbitron ratings and such. And
he is going to move to the weekends.
Yeah, he is. And I got to tell you this, we actually, on our listenership, have surpassed a couple of MSNBC hosts in listenership. I just want to say thank you to the listeners for that. But we're not including the Arbitron ratings, of course, but that's where we'd be.
Yeah, and MSNBC competing with their numbers. I'm not trying to say our audience is small, but I mean, MSNBC has the lowest ranking of any news station.
That's
right.
Wouldn't apply to Limbaugh or whatever. But anyway, Obama, and this is something that we have our sights set on, because we think that if we follow the money, and we do this in all investigations, Joe and I do this, have successfully done this, I've done it for 30 years. When you follow the money, all of a sudden answers become evident. But when Stephanie Cutter appeared on Schultz's program, she said that Obama's network across the country, encompassing grassroots individuals, they're organizing, they're volunteering their time to get the people who had gotten the president reelected now are volunteering their time to go against things like the NRA, and also to implement agendas such as the homosexual, the redefining of what normal is, basically. I just won't go through the list of things. The network has already been activated through this corporation. It's actually a corporation that has used is using Obama's excess campaign funds, many of which came from overseas, is now being reconstituted into a corporate type, umbrella type of organization. And we talked about this before, but this should frighten people, because previous presidents, I mean, I'm talking from Bush backward, they essentially leveraged their campaign into power, and then they got down to doing what they needed to do. But Obama appears to be running a very permanent campaign to destroy anyone who opposes his agenda, whether it's politically, morally, religiously, whatever that agenda might be. They're using these excess campaign contributions reconstituted into a different, like Obama for America, for example. And there are various offshoots. We're going to be reporting on this more in depth, but this is what's on our radar right now. This has been his agenda for so many years. This regime is into a full-scale opposition that is being operated, folks, right from the White House. Now think about that. You've got a corporation that is being operated from the White House. You don't have just the president. He is running a permanent corporation with the intent to destroy political, any type of political or personal, even, his enemies. Now, Media Matters, Color of Change, the American Legislative Exchange Council. These are just a few, the latter of which was pushing previous voter ID laws and such, pushing against voter ID laws. The Obama machine is now attempting through this corporation to not only use various arms of this octopus into all of American society, but he is going after using this machinery to amass his own private army, but not in the way that we talk, or that people understand, or it was understood. This is a different private army using the excess campaign funds into corporations that are now sending out these different smaller armies into our communities to go against, for example, on a state level or even local levels, to fight against certain issues that don't comport with or are not consistent with his objectives. This should frighten everyone. He has used allies outside of his realm, outside of his administration, to destroy not only political opposition, but to destroy anyone who disagrees with the agenda of, we'll say, communism. And it's just not limited, for example, to media matters. It's not limited to different. One of the very big targets on this, of course, is the NRA. But I just want to let people know, give everyone a heads up that this exists. There is a corporation that's being run out of the White House. It's not legal, but it's being done. Who's going to call them on this? Eric Holder? Doubtful. The American people? Doubtful. But there's a corporation being run using these campaign funds. Again, we'll have more on this, but I want everyone to really understand where this is coming from. Because Stephanie Cutter did mention some things on the Schultz show, that if you go back and start following the money and start putting together the pieces, we are truly a captured operation, especially when you consider a lot of this money came from overseas, yet has yet to be accounted for. For example, Saudi Arabian money. Do you think for one moment that the events in Benghazi, the gun-running operation in Benghazi, we are doing the heavy work. We are providing the military muscle for a Saudi Arabian objective. This is what we're talking about. It's a convolution of even the Iran-Contra situation. Once again, folks, you've got to understand what's going on. They're using their well-funded private money. They're using volunteers. Part of this operation, as well as we have learned, is funding the Cyber Warriors Project. So when you are on a political forum and you are marginalized, when you are taken to task, when there's a thread diversion, for example, or you are called or we're running a show, and all of a sudden you've got somebody in your chat room who's just causing trouble. It could very well be one of Obama's minions.
Yeah, it could. And I saw a story from the Washington Post the other day about some 4,900 new cyber warriors, but 900 were previously employed. The 4,000 were new. And I don't know where that jingle just came from. But what we're going to be doing...
I'm sorry, what did you just say? Because I just...
There was an article in the Washington Times or Washington Post yesterday about 4,000 cyber warriors. And okay. I know your number that was given to you was more specific, something 3,700.
So can I just brag a bit so the people listening to this show...
No, you can't brag.
Oh, come on. No, nope. Not brag, but just boast a little bit that the listeners of this show learned about that. This was 2 days ago, I think it was, in the Post or the Times. The Times, I think it was, you said, right?
It was from the Washington Post or Washington Times. Yeah.
Okay. So we were a couple of weeks ahead of the ball game. Does this not confirm, at least in some portion, does this not confirm the legitimacy or the authenticity or the
I'll see if I can find it.
I didn't make this out of... I didn't sit here at my desk and, hey, I think what I'm going to do is make up a guy and then start typing about cyber warriors. No. I didn't make this up out of whole cloth. I guess what I'm saying to you is the source is real, the information is real, and we've been proven correct. Not to brag or boast, but just to say we're a little bit ahead of the curve. And sometimes being ahead of the curve can mean life or death.
Sometimes you can think you're ahead of the curve, and information, is not, correct. But either way, yeah, you did. Your source did get information to you, and it seemed to come to fruition after that information was given to you. Here, Pentagon to boost cybersecurity force. This is the article I was looking at. The move requested by the Department of Defense Cyber Command is part of an effort to turn an organization that is focused largely on defensive measures into the equivalent of an Internet-era fighting force. The command, made up of 900 personnel, will expand to include 4,900 troops and civilians. I'll send you this article so you can go through it at your leisure.
There's a morsel of truth in that. But see, do you notice how they packaged it, where they're saying, well, this is for cybersecurity. No.
What was the date of your article?
I could tell you just momentarily here.
Okay.
Dead air. How's that?
No, I'll talk. Fill up the dead air with nonsensical noise with my gibberish here. But I asked because the article I sent you was from the very end of January, so I don't know.
Okay, mine was. Okay. Well, mine was the 6th of February, based on an interview I had on the 4th of February.
Yeah. I wasn't sure.
All right. Well, I take that boast back. But okay.
Hey, you shouldn't boast.
Yeah, but we're talking about two different things, though. We're talking about
we're talking about a more secretive, more offensive. We're talking about cyber attack more than cyber security. We're talking about people you were talking about, the infiltrators, the troublemakers, the people who are doing real-time intelligence gathering on individuals not engaged like the hosts, but individuals who are in the chat rooms, individuals who are a part of the groups that are being monitored.
Exactly.
But we're coming up to the closing minutes of this hour. We're going to open the phones for the last hour.
And tomorrow, if I can just mention this real quick, tomorrow, joining us at 8:30 is a lady who I have a lot of respect for, Ms. Susan Price. Her son, Aaron Kennefleck, was murdered in Afghanistan. He was a CIA operational asset. He was working for the CIA, and she's going to talk about what he was doing, and also she's going to tell the story about Aaron. She's a gracious, very humble, very, but yet very outspoken woman.
Yeah, listeners who have been listening for months, we talked about this Miss Susan Price and her son and the situation that they have been going through a while ago. And we went over, I remember it was maybe even as far back as last summer, we were going over his information, reading his personal logs, going through his computer. And
let me tell you something.
It'll be very interesting tomorrow, yes.
Yes. But the only thing I want to say on that is she is such a humble lady who has dedicated probably, as long as I've known her, 8 to 10 hours a day, in addition to what she's going to do during the day, to get justice for her son. Dakota Meyer, who won the Congressional Medal of Honor, actually won that because of the fighting that they were involved in. But the real nugget here, folks, the real nugget is she's got real-time information about what's going on in the military, what's going on and why we're there and what we're doing there. And she's got sources that are so plugged in. So you just want to, and her research, I'll tell you what, I've got, 2 feet worth of paper. I don't even measure it in pages anymore, just by feet or pounds of her research. The things from you want to talk about Illuminati? You think the Illuminati is just a conspiracy nonsense? No. You think it's just something of the past? You think Satanism and homosexual agenda and Masonic is not even part of the military? Think again. Tomorrow night, unbelievable. He's just going to be with us from 8:30 to the close, and she's got some interesting things to say. I'm sorry, Joe. Go ahead. Finish.
661-244-9839 is the number. That is 661-244-9839 is the number. Call in. We'll be taking your calls throughout the third hour as we are up against the break for our second hour, as you are listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This Thursday, March 14th, 2013. As time is flying by, we are almost halfway through March, going to be in April before we know it. We'll be right back, folks, after this short break. Stay with us.
If you're stumped, you don't know what kind of gift to give to a friend or a loved one, I'm telling you, you must go to 4physics.com. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. This is your one-stop shopping palace. That's the only way I can put it. I could spend easily an hour on this website. Innovative, fun, educational. There are games, books, weather instruments, unique time-telling devices, jewelry, optical devices, laboratory equipment. Let me give you an example. We all know we can tell time with a sundial. You've seen those advertised. Did you know that you could tell time by the stars? At 4physics.com, you can buy a horologium nocturnum. This was a navigational device used in the 15th century by navigators at night to tell time by the stars. It's beautifully crafted in the shape of a pendant made of bronze and pewter or gold and silver. Absolutely a stunning gift. I would be proud to give it to anyone. You must go to 4physics.com. Even if you're not stumped, that's 4physics. That's the numeral 4, PHYSICS.com. It's your one-stop shopping palace. Any problems that you have, I don't know what to get Grandpa, I don't know what to get my loved one, that's unique, you will find it at 4physics.com. Please take my word for it. Go to the website, but give yourself a lot of time because you're not going to want to leave. 4physics.com.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have a long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here for Granland Firearms. That's Granland Firearms of British Columbia. Our great friends, Carl and Lori Granland. What a great place to shop for firearms, for any kind of survival hunting equipment. They've got a great gun stock list. If you're in the mood, well, I guess that's a Freudian slip perhaps. If you're in the market for a weapon, whether it be a rifle, a hunting rifle, a shotgun,
check out their gun stock list, but call to verify for their availability. But their prices are exceptional. They're very, very competitive in terms of their prices. Visit GranlandFirearms.com. Very easy for you. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, our home base. Click on Granland Firearms and mosey on up to Granland Firearms. Take a look at their website and sign their guest book while you're there. You can just say hello to Lori and Carl Granland. Great people. Tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you. That's GranlandFirearms.com.
Doug Hagmann. One guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Welcome back, folks, to a third and final hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. It is the 14th day of March 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, seeking truth wherever it may be, however elusive it is. I just want to mention one other thing. Good, dear friends of ours, Freeze Dry Guy, Freeze Dry Foods. In fact, you can visit Freeze Dry Guy website off of our website at HomelandSecurityUS.com. They're having a great special for Hagmann and Hagmann listeners this month as well. They do this every month. If you mention you're a listener to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, definitely send them an email. But they've got a fantastic sale this month. Just visit their website. You can find out what it is. I forgot to mention that during the break. As we get into this hour, we'll be taking your calls, 661-244-9839. I just want to thank Joe for being in studio, for being reporting for duty, as bloodied as he is after a week of just a tremendously tough week, but he's a trooper. Just one thing before we get to the calls. I happened across this article today when I was going through some documents. This is a year old. In fact, almost a year old to the day. And the headline caught my eye. And, folks, this is even more applicable for what we're talking about. Central banks. Why should you care about central banks? Well, central banks now operating as one global monopoly. That's the headline, with a question mark, of course. But why should you care about central banks? Because we're all subjugated to central banks at this point. And I'm just going to paraphrase some highlights, and then we'll go to the phones and talk to you folks. Central banks' joint efforts sustain global system. Never before have the world's central banks sent so much money sloshing through the global financial system, from slashing interest rates. Think about the ZIRP, zero interest rate policy here, and buying government debt. By the way, are we not buying what? We're buying debt. I was looking for some notes I took earlier today. The debt we're buying is our own debt. Remember how they said we'd never monetize debt? Oh my goodness, are we monetizing? That's all we're doing is monetizing our debt. If you happen to see Max Kaiser go just absolutely off the wall on Alex+Jones the other day. I'm not sure when it was recorded. Alex couldn't rein him in, but it was amazing. He's pushing something called the Bitcoin, which, ladies and gentlemen, I agree with Max Kaiser pretty much a lot. But this Bitcoin thing, man, I'll tell you, I don't know. But bond bubble burst, but the derivative issue. You're looking at quadrillions. If the derivatives burst, and they will, you're looking at more money than the world even knows. Derivatives are nothing more than bets. It's kind of like what a derivative is. Let me just kind of give you an idea what it is. You go in and you play a game of poker. Well, let's see. I don't care whatever game you play. You play a game and you lose. Double or nothing, double or nothing, double or nothing. That's what derivatives are. It's just double or nothing process. That's all you really have to know. And it's what you're betting is nothing. It's just out of thin air, made out of thin air. But anyway, central banks from 2012, from March of last year, over the past, at this time, and this is important, over the past 3.5 years, the central banks of the U.S., Britain, Japan, and 17 countries that use the euro have pumped out so much money that their balance sheets have reached a combined $8.6 trillion. Folks, that number has gone double in the last year. Double. Okay. The dominant social theme is that more is better, but each bank does its own thing. That's under the central bank umbrella. It's important to understand this. The free market analysis, it's a much denied fact that what might be called a New World Order is continually being developed at the highest reaches of power. But what is less well known is the amount of coordination already developed between the facilities that provide the engine for the global governance. Central banks are separate banking facilities. They're responsible for various elements of their country's economies. Think Federal Reserve here in the United States. There are their own country's Federal Reserves everywhere. They're operated, some are operated anyway, at arm's length from the government, but all of them are likely in one way or another to be controlled by the power elite, and the elite, they're made up of these banking families with corporate and religious ties. And I say religious ties, in this case I mean the Vatican Bank. The Vatican Bank. The Vatican Bank. I repeated that unintentionally. I'm not stuck like an old-time record. The Vatican Bank. That's going to come into play. You're going to be hearing about this. That's owned by the Rothschilds and military interests. So the elite are made up of banking families with corporate, religious, and military interests. They have continually pushed forward their homogenizing agenda. The general public is not supposed to be aware of this. You guys aren't supposed to know this, but of course we are, and we are trying to make this known. The Western media, the MSNBC, Bloomberg News, Associated Press, hey, they're not supposed to report it either. They're not supposed to explain it. But the fact is they exist. And this article gives a lot of figures and questions whether this will, in fact, continue in the same fashion, increase, decrease, and it also mentions bond purchases and quantitative easing. Quantitative easing, of course, just a fancy way of saying that the Fed is printing money and buying paper that the market would otherwise just trash. Well, here's the bottom line with this, as Steve would say. The bottom line is this. The central banks, the one world economy, is becoming more central. There's more centralizing going on, if I can kind of screw up a word. And a lot of people disagree, if you can believe it, that centralizing is a bad thing. They say it's a good idea. But no, it's not. Because what we are going to see with centralization is the complete capitulation of our personal pocketbooks under government oversight. And I just wanted to bring that up. Joe, let's get into whatever we need to get into now.
We're going to go to call 661-244-9839 is the number. We're going to go to area code 248 first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh, hi. My name's Melissa, and I actually wanted to call about the email you got earlier, but you started talking about central banks, and I ran over my computer. You know, Tunisia and Egypt and Libya were the three countries that were financially stable enough, with enough gold and assets to put this the global central bank idea out in the cold. And it's just interesting that the Libyan rebels set up their own central bank within days of the fall of the government. So I thought that was kind of don't know if you know that.
Yeah. NATO, by the way, you mentioned Libya's gold, for example. Where did that go?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
so
no doubt. We've basically given our armed services to install a global central bank. So if people aren't aware of that, they need to look it up. It's an ugly thing. But the reason I called was because I know you guys don't, get into apologetics, and I'm so glad you do reference, the gospel of Christ, Bible, and so forth. But I am a Catholic who read the Bible, and I just wanted to say to your listener who wrote you the email that there's a really good reason people are pushing on Catholics. I read that Bible, and I'm just saying she should read the whole thing. It's a life-changing experience. We don't usually do that as Catholics, but if she feels like she's getting bashed, it's not bashing. People want to get Catholics to read the Bible for a very good reason. And it changed my life, so I just want your listener to, do that. So.
That's awesome, Elizabeth. And I would say anybody who would refer to themselves as Christian should definitely read the Bible, no matter which denomination.
Wait a second, I gotta just ask. Did you say Elizabeth or Melissa?
It's Alyssa with an E. But
I'm sorry.
Alyssa. Okay.
I listened after I read the Bible on why is it that I knew so little? I was always going to church, and I was raised a Catholic, and I graduated from Catholic schools, and I'm a pretty Catholic person here. How did I not know what was in that book? When I did research, and Vatican II sanctioned only 1,100 verses out of the 31,000 that are in there, and that's all Catholics ever get. And there's a lot more in there, and it's a great book. It's the greatest book ever. So I just wanted to, call.
Well, God bless you for. Thank you for saying that. The Bible is our ultimate authority. I mean, that's where it's at. So.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, people sit there and say, "Oh, there's no proof of God." Well, it's kind of like math class. You can't prove a math equation problem until you actually learn a little bit about it. So if somebody wants proof of what pi is, they have to do their math, the math tables, their, arithmetic and stuff. It's something you have to study before you can prove. So these people who talk like that drive me crazy. There's a lot to the Bible and a lot to the truth. You have to look at it first, though.
You're exactly correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys. I love you guys. You guys are doing a great job, so I'm always going to be tuning in. Thanks, and have a good night.
Alyssa, God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Bye.
Her audio was a little bit low for the people listening, but hopefully it comes through louder on the archives. She just said that, as a Catholic, she read the Bible, and it changed her life. And no matter what you are, if you haven't read the Bible and you do read the Bible, it should change your life. And if you're like me, the more I read the Bible, the more it does change my life. Even if I read the same book 10 times, I will get 10 new things out of it, something new every time I read it. It's very mysterious and intriguing the way that happens and the way the Lord works through His own Word, His living Word. Moving on the calls here, area code 912. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, how y'all doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm blessed. Actually, I had a couple of things that I just wanted to point out. Not saying "Thus saith Lord" or that something is going to happen on this day, or nothing like that. I'm just saying these are clues, like breadcrumbs. Like y'all always talk about collecting the breadcrumbs. And the guy yesterday that was talking about numerology, he was hitting on a lot of things that I had started picking up. But one of the things is the 1,260 days that it talks about in Daniel, which is time and half a time. It talks about those that are blessed or that wait until that particular time. Now, when Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, 1,260 days from there would be March 21st. Now,
really?
Now, what's funny about that is now you got the Georgia Guidestones, the ones that talk about only 500 million people being on the earth and all this other stuff. its ceremony was open on 1980, which would make it 33 years. And it was open, the ceremony was on March 22nd. It would go with that 322. Now, it would be 33 years on March 22nd since the guidestones were open, or they had their ceremony opening to the guidestones, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
and then
I saw that date too. Yeah, 1980, March 22nd or March 23rd. I think you said the 22nd was the opening ceremony. Yeah, and it's written in the stone right there. If you guys can go look at the picture on Google and find it.
You know, and go ahead, caller. Go ahead.
And one more thing. When I saw I was watching Fox when they said that the Pope, when the white smoke came out of the chimney, it was 7:06, and 7 + 6 is 13. And then it was on the 13th that this happened. And, 13 being that number of rebellion, it seems like, it's just something to look at. If we're looking at numerology and we know what they look for and what they like to proclaim, because Satan will throw it in your face, but he won't throw it in the face that everyone can understand. So only the ones of the occult or the quote-unquote hidden knowledge will see what's actually being said at the moment that this happened. And I thought it was just, kind of a coincidence that the news broadcast that I was watching was Fox, which said that it was 7:06 over there when the white smoke was coming out of the chimney, which would have made it 13. So that being 13 again is pretty wild. And also I came on a couple of days ago, and I was trying to tell you the name of that guy that was talking about the satanic rituals that were happened at the cottage, but that they built on top of a Indian satanic ritualistic altar that the cottage was built on. That the banksters, those 6 banksters, went to Jekyll Island to come up with this plan to make the Federal Reserve.
Right.
His name is Tim Bence, Timbence. He's on Rob Scuba's show. I don't know if y'all know who that is, but it's actually his featured show on Blog Talk, and he actually tells the whole story, his whole how it all went about and how he found out that it was a satanic plot that they were actually on top of. So this was actually satanically charged, this idea of the Fed Reserve. So it's really satanic at nature, all the way to its creation to where it was at, because of, housing energy and knowing about negative spirits and, all the other stuff that LA and all the other people that come on the show talk about.
Right, exactly. And I think people sometimes, their eyes roll back in their heads when we talk about numerology, because that gets into kind of an area which people say, well, come on, are you serious? But I was surprised, as anyone, I would say, and I consider myself a pretty rational guy, and not one to fall for, some really wild stuff. But I was really, and it took me a long time to get the fact that the occultists, that numbers mean so much to these people. I never got that. To me, 13 is just a number. I mean, it's a number.
Yeah.
But to me, to them, it's numbers mean things. And if we understand, as you point out too, that these occultists, that the people in power put a lot of thought into numerology and occult numerology, it gives us a way to understand their thinking. Do we need to understand it totally? No, but I think we need to know it's there, and it will help us understand the larger agenda. So I want to thank you for pointing that out. That's pretty interesting. 1,260 days.
Obama getting the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's right between the 20th and the 22nd. Which is kind of weird too, because how they play on certain numbers and everything. It's just a lot of stuff that's happening in March that just it just really seems a little odd to me. It doesn't wrestle with my spirit too well.
Wow. Well, and don't forget, caller, the new year for these occultists, these really bad Satanist people. I mean, their new year begins on April 1st, for whatever that's worth to anyone. Again, you've got people have to understand it doesn't matter what's important to us, what's important to them, and then we can begin to understand how things, what their machinations are. So, wow, interesting.
And one more thing, just one more thing. I know I got to get ready to go, but one more thing. Also, a lot of people are saying that that Tom didn't actually, get the prediction right. It was in 2013. If we would go off the Hebrew calendar, it actually still is 2012. So
correct.
Technically, depending on what calendar you go off of, the prediction was actually almost accurate. Because then Easter, whenever the new moon is this month, I don't know exactly when, but if Easter falls before the new moon, then all of the stuff that they talked about actually happened in 2012 and not 2013.
Right, in the Hebrew year 5773. You're exactly right. So that's, and thanks for pointing that out. God bless you, my friend. Thanks for the call.
God bless you, sir.
Yeah, very interesting
What a great call. Yeah, every time he calls in, it's a wonderful call. I saw a short YouTube video on the dates of the Obama Peace Prize, and don't forget the spiral that appeared over Norway during when that happened. That I think is something we need to keep in the back of our mind, just so we know it's there and we have it there. Because what significance is that? Well, we might not know at this time, but it might be clear to us later, especially with all these dates coming up, correlating with all these occultic numbers. So,
and one more thing too, before, just like, for example, that, and you can find this on stevequayle.com, the account of the intelligence officer, life as an investigator is like a box of chocolates. It's important to understand too the DNA. See, because if we are to, and I know there are a lot of people out there who are saying, well, what are you talking about? Well, look, if we are to understand as Christians that the deception will be so great, so affirmed, we'll say, by evidence, and that evidence will be perhaps DNA. In other words, we'll say that some savior will come in and say, well, I'm showing you that I'm for real, or people will say he's for real because, look, he's got the DNA of Jesus Christ. And how they determine that, well, I don't know. But see, the deception will be so great that even some of the very elect will be deceived. Understand that the deception is going to be so great, whether it's numerology, DNA, or all of the above. That's why the Bible itself, turn to the Bible and know you've got to have the Holy Spirit guidance and discernment, because what we're about to experience, or what we will experience, folks, we could get tripped up so easy. I mean, Joe and I, you, everyone can get tripped up so easy. That's why our faith in God, and our prayer, our daily, hourly prayers must be solid, and our belief must be rock solid. Our foundations, you strike at the foundations of anything, there goes the building, there goes whatever was built. Make sure your foundations are solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Foundations have to be solid. Foundations built on sand can crumble. Those built on the rock will not. Moving on to the callers here. Area code 715. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Doug and Joe. I was wondering if you could clear something up for me with regards to the lightning strikes on the Vatican. Does anybody has there been pictures out there that the lightning struck in the same exact place? Do we know that?
Well, I know the pictures. I saw the pictures from the first strike that was reported, and I saw reports of the second strike. And I don't know if anybody in the chat has seen pictures of the second lightning strike. I don't know if that was caught on tape or not, or on film.
I'm glad you asked that, because AccuWeather actually came out with a statement. And it struck the dome twice. Now, there is, according to AccuWeather, and apparently the Italian version of AccuWeather, I don't know, I'm not even going to try to pronounce their version of AccuWeather. It's 4 words. It's associated with the another Italian thing I'm not even going to try to pronounce. People thought on Facebook initially that the photo was faked. So this Italian version of AccuWeather went out because I was curious too. I mean, are you serious? Well, you understand that Rome is on a hill or above the area, so it's going to be prone to lightning strikes. And of course, the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica, it's the highest point there. Well, they've got a lightning rod, if you will, attached to the top. So, according to the Italian equivalent of AccuWeather, yes. Did it strike twice? Yes. But they also said this: the Empire State Building in New York City is hit by lightning 100 times a year.
We've seen it and videotaped it.
We were in New York City when it did, yeah. So, but does that mean? I mean, but still, even if it's, but still, what are the odds? But yes. So to answer your question, I can say that I feel very comfortable based on all the research we've done with accredited organizations that yes, it struck twice in the same spot.
Okay. Well, I consider that to be a sign because I thought lightning never struck in the same place twice.
Well, it's absent of lightning rods and intervention in that fashion, perhaps not. But don't forget, this is like I said, on a rise, and they have lightning rods. So if lightning is going to strike in the same vicinity, it's going to be attracted by the lightning rods.
Okay, very good. All right. So, thanks for answering my question.
No problem. Thank you. But you know what, Joe? It doesn't make it any less. Because Jesus, as Marianne had told me, and thank you, Marianne, for saying this, she said, whenever Jesus wanted to make a point, he always said something twice. If you look in the Scripture, in the red lettering Bible, we'll say, or the red letters, often, I shouldn't say always, often said it twice.
I didn't even hear what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah, are you all right?
Yeah, I'm fine. I was following something else.
Okay, no, it's just Marianne had said when Jesus wanted to make a point, often he would say that twice. Verily, verily, I say unto you. For example, use a word twice.
I see what you mean. Okay. Interesting.
So could this be? Could this be a coincidence? Well, if you really want to be purely secular and one of these people that yeah, sure, it could be a coincidence. A lot of things everything could be a coincidence. Really? Are you going to put your soul and your everlasting life on the fact that this is merely a coincidence? You want to do that? Go for it. Me? Nah. Personally, I believe it was a sign, but that's just me.
Moving on the calls here, we're going to go to area code 303. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Help, O Lord, for the godly are fast disappearing. The faithful have vanished from the earth. Neighbors lie to each other, speaking with flattering lips and insincere hearts. May the Lord bring their flattery to an end and silence their proud tongues. They say, we will lie to our heart's content. Our lips are our own. Who can stop us? The Lord replies, I have seen violence done to the helpless, and I have heard the groans of the poor. Now I will rise up to rescue them, as they have longed for me to do. The Lord's promises are pure, like silver refined in a furnace, purified 7 times over. Therefore, Lord, we know you will protect the oppressed, preserving them forever from this lying generation. Even though the wicked strut about and evil is praised throughout the land.
Very good.
With everybody, considering the times that we're living in.
Very good, yes.
I really trust everything we hear from the news.
No, absolutely not. Where were you reading from, caller?
That's Psalms 12.
Psalms 12. Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Is there anything else you'd like to add tonight?
Absolutely. I wanted to give a plug for Grandland. A family member of mine was looking to purchase firearms to protect his family. Grandland came through. They shipped it to the U.S., and there's no problems in doing so. So all those callers up there that were wondering, go for it.
Uh-huh. Well, thanks. We like feedback like that. Good, bad, or indifferent. We like feedback. So appreciate that. Grandland Firearms came through for your family member. God bless them. And I'll tell you something. We don't endorse people willy-nilly. We believe in the people we endorse, and it's always good to hear a success story. So thank you very much, caller. God bless you.
I bookmarked Psalms 12. I'm going to read that again later. And go ahead.
For Doug, I've had migraines my whole life, and the only thing that's actually reversed them, and I haven't had one since, is chiropractic, because it's the body's alignment that is out of whack when you start having migraines like that. And for all those callers that were wondering about chiropractic, I was skeptical until I started going, and I have a down-to-earth, real good chiropractor.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I'll try anything. I've got multiple spinal issues, so I've got to be careful. But that said, yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right, man. Thanks.
God bless you both.
God bless you, and thanks for the scripture there. That was an excellent time.
Psalms
12, yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Moving on here, we're going to, I think this is Sheila, 856. Sheila.
Hello, guys.
Good evening.
Sheila, it's great to hear you.
You too. You were just mentioning deception.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was reading an article earlier over on Now the End Begins. I can't even tell you right now what the article was about, but I went down to the comments, and I saw a comment in there about Ralph Peters. Have you ever seen or heard Major Ralph Peters? He's on Fox News quite a bit. They talk to him about the different things that's going on within the military. I see him and hear him a lot, and I have a lot of respect for him, or I did. But this guy said something that got my attention, so I went over to Ralph Peters' warrior class, and you scroll down to, are you an enemy of the state? So I went down and I read that, and there was different things there about him. And I started reading this, and I could not believe what I was reading. It literally scared me to death. I had to read that 3 different times to grasp what was coming out of his mouth. Now, from what I read, that particular article was smuggled out of the Pentagon. He works in the Pentagon. He's major retired, but he still works in the Pentagon. But if anybody wants to read that, and what's in that is tied with everything that you talk about. He talks about the UN and using the UN military here. You got to read it. I just couldn't grasp it. And here's a man I listened to. I had a lot of respect for him, and he's just a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Who's the wolf in sheep's clothing? Who's the wolf?
Ralph Peters. He's a major in the Army, and he's working in the Pentagon. And
are we talking? Wait a second, just to be sure. Are we talking about the guy that writes Owen Perry? He's a guy that's a military guy that has written books, or
he's written a lot of books, but they're in his name. It's Ralph Peters.
Okay.
Major Ralph Peters, Warriors class, and we are the Warriors.
Okay, and you're saying he's not to be trusted? Is that what you're saying?
No, from what I read, if you need to fear him. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
I mean, it's outright scathing. It's terrible. Unbelievable.
And Sheila, maybe I missed something here. You base this on what particularly? His position or his statements regarding what?
It was statements that he had written about the militia, Christians, anybody that's against the New World Order and our federal government and the UN. That's what it was based on. And what he wants to do. What he wants our military to do. What he wants the UN troops to do.
Which is what, if you can just kind of give us a hint?
Kill us. Kill us.
Okay.
Pretty much it. That's what he wants. I just can't believe it's coming from one of our people. It was just unbelievable. I mean, I've read a lot of stuff. I know that, I believe everything, but to have this coming from a military man and to listen to him, you know what I mean? I just can't, it's hard for me to grasp it. But that particular article was supposedly smuggled out of the Pentagon. There's a lot of writings in there about him, but I didn't read them. I just said that, and I was just totally taken back by it.
All right, and you found this on which website, so we can verify this?
Ralph Peters.
Right.
Warriors Class. And you scroll down to, are you the enemy of the state?
Okay. All right, we'll do that. You sure this wasn't? You sure this was him writing, and this is his views, and it's not taken out of context, or?
No, I'm thinking it's him. Of course, here we are with the deception. You don't know whether you get the truth anymore or what, but from what I've read, everything that's on that is everything you talk about. Everything we're hearing. That's what upset me.
Okay, I'm seeing here now. I just searched this. Ralph Peters, subject, are you an enemy of the state? What Christians should know. Just by looking at this, let's see, from Pentagon Intelligence Deputy Chief of Staff Major Ralph Peters, and he states this, the desire for patriotism, allegedly states this, the desire for patriotism, the sovereignty of our nation, our flag, our religious and other freedoms and nationalism is considered an enemy doctrine. The U.S. Armed Forces must be prepared to fight against all those who oppose the New World Order and are holding out for nationalism. Wow. Okay. I read that right.
As you keep reading, it gets uglier. It gets uglier. It's downright sickening.
Document 3, the U.S. Attorney General, former Janet Reno, has sent and this is, by the way, folks, is dated 9/20/01. This memo says that has sent the U.S. Attorney General, formerly Janet Reno, has sent a confidential memo to the U.S. attorneys that an investigation would take place against fundamentalists and right-wing Christians. It states that investigation and surveillance of right-wing political and fundamentalist religious organizations and individuals will take place in certain states. Dossiers on targeted individuals are to be compiled and retained in Washington in the Justice Department in the event of a widespread uprising, such as martial law. These individuals must be viewed as potential terrorists in all caps. And he says, friends, are you an enemy of the state? Or it says, friends, are you an enemy of the state? So, okay, is this... okay. We're going to look into this. Obviously, we know that we're considered enemies of the state. Christians, fundamentalists, okay, we know that.
Yep.
Wow, okay. Well, and here it is in black and white.
There it is. I mean, it was just, I wanted to be sick when I read that. And I also I wasn't sure whether or not it was legitimate, but you're seeing it. I mean, it's everything that we're talking about, everything we're hearing, and it's coming straight from a major, and it's sickening. It sounds like sickening.
It's interesting because there are some articles or some writings from him from the American War College, and back from the summer of 1994. Whether or not he's still relevant, well, I guess you say he is relevant because is he on Fox News currently?
he comes on there quite a bit when there's something going on with the military or whatever. I mean, I had a lot of respect for the man. He don't like the way the military is being treated, and he don't like the way the Obama administration's doing. Well, not according to that.
All right, we'll look into this. You know what? Before we really fully, throw the guy under the bus, proverbially or metaphorically speaking, we're going to look into this, see exactly where he stands, especially look at his writings for the War College, and see if, in fact, this is exactly how he feels, or if there's something else going on here. Because if for a formerly high-ranking person like this to have this. This would be newsworthy indeed. So, although we know this, we know that they're, what should we know that we're the enemy?
Yeah, we do. It just bothers me. A lot of it's got to do with my husband being in the military, his whole adult life, and to have one of our own. It's one of our own. It's betrayal, and it's just sickening, But there's something else. There was something else I want to tell you. You brought up Schultz. A couple of years ago, I was watching Shepard Smith, and he was doing a story on something, and this picture popped up, and it had absolutely nothing to do with what he was talking about, and it was Obama, Schultz, Jim Baker, Henry Kissinger, and they were all Secretaries of State, except there was one sitting there, but he was a younger guy, but I didn't know who he was, and Shepard Smith looked at the picture and he says, "Well, what's this?" He said, "Why we got all these Secretary of State sitting with Obama?" And so I don't believe in coincidences. I think when things happen, they happen for a reason. And I watch Jack Van Impe every week, and I know some of your listeners do. And he had been saying for the last couple of years that Kissinger was priming Obama for the New World Order.
Oh, so yeah, Joe's been talking about that.
Exactly. So when I saw that picture and he was meeting with all these Secretaries of State, I knew right then he was talking about the New World Order and what they're planning on doing. There ain't no doubt about it.
Well, and don't forget George Soros, the Secretaries of State project as well on the state level. I mean, look, it's so incestuous. This Obama, I mean, think about this. Obama's mother, Geithner's father, working together. Peter Geithner, the father of Tim Geithner, the former Treasury Secretary, working at the Ford Foundation. Oh, come on. It's all, we're being set up. It's all a setup. So.
Yep, it is a setup. I find it amazing that, you can make all these connections with all these different people, and they all come back to Obama.
Well, it's...
And it comes from years ago as well,
Oh, yeah. Are we not seeing, are we not seeing the end game scenario playing out right now?
We are seeing it. But we all got one thing in common. We all believe in Jesus Christ, and we know where we're going.
Well, I believe, and that's the only thing that's not the only thing, but that's one huge thing that keeps me going, knowing that. And I'll tell you one thing, I want to be on the right side of history, and certainly the right side of God.
Exactly. That's all we got at this point. This is getting really big.
Yeah, it is.
All right, I love you guys.
We love you too. God bless you, and you have a great night.
You too.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. All right, we got time left for another call. We're going to go to area code 580. You're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, guys.
Good evening.
I think that's me.
That's you.
The guy before this lady said part of what I wanted to say. My daughter used to have, I was going to tell you, Doug, she used to have those migraines just like you described. She couldn't stand the touch of the pillow even, on her head. It was just, but she went to a chiropractor, and when she was a child, she had a fall, and all these years, all those years, she's grown now. And she goes in there like every 4 months or so, and they do a neck alignment, and that she does not have migraines. And now you know, everyone's different, and you can't promise that, but that might be something you do want to check into.
Well, thank you. I will.
Yeah, because well, I tell you what, I watched her have those, and she would just nearly go blind. You know, she couldn't see; she was in so much pain.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's unless you have had them, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate
that. Well, do one of you guys veto out the other? Is there a head Hagmann? You know what I want to say?
Why might you ask that question?
Is it allowed for me to sing a little song?
I have no objection.
Oh, go ahead. I can't.
Probably sing better than my dad.
It's just real short, and I'm not trying out for the Dove Awards or nothing like that, but the words are so good. And, you know, everything that's going on, people's eyes are just, our attention is being drawn to so many different things, you know. And
I'll tell you this. You will be the first person ever to sing on international radio.
Oh, do I not want to?
We want to hear it.
No, we've had a lot of...
Okay, I'll say like everyone else that really can't sing and shouldn't be, don't listen to me, listen to the words.
Okay. The floor is yours, my dear.
Okay. Well, some may have their houses and some their land and gold, but in that bank of heaven I have wealth that can't be told, where moth and rust cannot corrupt and thieves can ne'er abide. My treasures are all safe upon the other side. On the other side, treasures there have I, treasures that this world and all its wealth can never buy. And when I reach that city and the gates swing open wide, I'll find my treasures waiting on the other side. Beautiful words. Anyway.
Very beautiful.
It takes a lot of courage to call in and sing. I could not do it.
A lot of something.
I could not even sing on this show, and God bless you for that.
All together now. No, I'm just kidding. But no, thank you for that. Wow.
But really, you know, we're looking for the Antichrist. We're looking for the false prophet. We're looking for all the signs, which we're told to do, but we're also told to keep, you know, look for our Redeemer.
Yes.
That's one. And where our treasure is, you know, he's coming back with our reward. On the other side, treasures there have I. I should have said it instead of saying it because I can't.
No.
You know what?
But anyway,
you got a beautiful voice, and we appreciate that. And
anyway,
now we can put that in a record book. We can actually.
Now you can erase this.
We're going to use it as an intro.
Anyway, you guys have a good night.
Thank you very much.
God bless you. You have a wonderful night, too.
Bye.
Yeah, the bravery to. I mean, I couldn't even sing on my own on this show without blushing and cracking up. And
the way you sing, let's not. I just had that vision before she started of Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." You know,
how awesome is that?
You know what? Look. Isn't it fun, though? I mean, I understand that some people might say, "What are you doing?" But you know what? It's part. It is, especially in the heavy topics that we talk about.
Just like the words of the song, and just like she said afterwards, that we have to remain joyous. We have to keep a happy and joyous heart at all times. We cannot be brought down by the things of this world, the happenings of this world, the doom and gloom of this world, no matter what the time, whether it be good or bad. We always need to keep the same amount of faith and the same amount of focus on the Lord.
That's
and especially so many people, like you mentioned last night, you know, when things are good, people don't consider the Lord. But when you're lying there waiting for a hospital or an ambulance to come pick you up, you know,
all of a sudden priorities
Right. There's no excuse in a foxhole, as people say.
Yeah.
We need to have that same strength and love for the Lord in the best of times as well as the worst of times. We can't use the Lord for our way out when we're in trouble. Okay? He's not a bail bondsman.
That's a very good Joeism. He's not. God is not a bail bondsman. Yeah, and before the close of the show, allow me to ask this among our listening audience, folks: have you bought that extra can of whatever this week? Have you bought that extra box of macaroni and cheese? If you can't, have you done whatever you need to do? Have you taken that extra step this week for your family? Maybe you'll do it tomorrow, after payday or whatever. Have you done that for yourself and for your family, for preparations? Have you been the responsible person? Have you done that? If not, do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and if you have your things stored up that you think you need, and people, your neighbors, don't have those, it might not be a bad idea to help those people out if you have the means.
Especially and I would urge people to do that if they know someone infirmed or elderly or can't get out, take them something, and
and for those
make it a habit.
Have nobody to take care of them, or they are not able to store up anything, you not need to worry, because the Lord knows what you need and what you will need, and will take care of you.
That's right. So, but my goodness, Joe, it's another show in the hopper. Can we squeeze in one more call, or I don't want to shortchange people. We got about 3 minutes, so all right, that's fine. I just want to say this in closing. We look at all of the news that's taking place. We look at everything that's going on. Joe and I, prepare the heck just to bring you the news. We've got so many things that we could talk about. We've got these. We've got the Feinstein bill that we mentioned earlier that's squeaked by the Senate Judiciary Committee. Folks, we know what's coming. We do know what's coming. We know what's coming, and I think at this point now we have to prepare for what's coming. It doesn't mean that we can't continue to be told of the movement of the chess pieces. We need that. But then again, the focus now, it's late in the day, and we need to be preparing ourselves mentally. Talk with your family. If you tried it in the past, I ask perhaps that you try it again, maybe just over a cup of coffee, and see where they're at mentally today. Perhaps maybe might be a different picture altogether. Keep trying to work with your family, work within your family, to avoid a brother against brother, a father against son situation, or even a neighbor against neighbor situation. Because when the things do happen, and they will happen, when the dollar collapses, when things take place, you're going to need that support. You're going to need that camaraderie. You're going to need also that level of mutual understanding about what is taking place. So a lot of times the best time to talk before a crisis is before a crisis, or the best time to talk is before a crisis. Don't wait.
Know your plans. Yeah.
Yes. And you know what? Like I said, it's never too early to prepare. It's never too early to prepare. We have time. Use the time that we are given by the grace of God to go out and to make your preparations, your practical preparations. Holly Dale, for example, if you don't even know where to start, Dare to Prepare, Holly Dale's book, great book, or just plain and simple, just use your own common sense, and know that we're in this together. Joe and I we think about each and every one of you collectively, some of you individually, and we are with you. So I just want to say that, and know that you're not alone.
Yeah. You're not alone. Even if you have nobody, you have always the Lord with you. God bless each and every one of you. I hope to see you guys tomorrow, as we will be joined with Susan Price, our very special guest for tomorrow night. You're not going to want to miss her, to hear her story about her son and what her family has gone through. We hope each and every one of you can be here to support her and pray for her, and might be able to lend a helping hand in a way. Just don't know yet. We'll see tomorrow. But
talking about You talk about drones flying overhead and being harassed by a helicopter?
Yeah.
You've heard nothing yet. God bless you, folks. Good night.
We'll see you tomorrow.